The stars above New Seoul Colony burned bright that morning. Captain Taeyang Kim stood on the observation deck of Defense Station 7, watching the mining ships come and go. 12 million people lived and worked on this planet, orbiting the distant star Kepler 442b. They were humans who left Earth 50 years ago, hoping to build something new among the stars. Taeyang commanded 6 frigates, small ships but enough to protect the colony from pirates and accidents. He never imagined they would face a real war. Nobody did. Humanity had been in space for only 70 years. They made friends, traded with alien species, and tried to learn the rules of galactic society. The Galaxy Council controlled everything. 7 ancient alien races who had been in space for thousands of years. They made the laws. They decided who could go where. They told younger species what to do. Humanity followed their rules, paid their taxes, and tried not to cause trouble. But the Council was afraid. Humans expanded too fast. They built colonies too quickly. They asked too many questions. Ambassador Ji-woo Park spent 3 years on the Council homeworld trying to negotiate. She sent messages back to Earth warning that tensions were rising. The Council's leader, a reptilian creature named Velcrix, hated humans. He called them dangerous upstarts who needed to be controlled. The ultimatum came without warning. Admiral Hyojin Choi received the message at Earth's Central Command. The Council demanded that humanity abandon every colony outside the solar system. They had 72 hours to evacuate. After that, any humans found in Council space would be removed by force. President Jae-hyun Lee called an emergency meeting. The entire United Nations Assembly gathered. Director Min Seo Kang from Intelligence said the Council was moving warships into position. But Earth's military leaders thought it was just a threat. The Council always made threats. They never actually attacked anyone. President Lee addressed the galaxy. His message was simple and clear. Humanity would not abandon their colonies. They had broken no laws. They had hurt no one. If the Council wanted war, they would have to start it. The Council started it. Taeyang was drinking coffee when the alarm screamed. His sensor officer shouted that 300 ships just appeared in orbit. 300 Council warships against his 6 frigates. He knew they were dead before he gave the first order. The attack began immediately. Velcrix's massive dreadnought led the assault. Plasma beams cut through space. Taeyang's frigates fired back, but their weapons barely scratched the Council ship's shields. One by one, his ships exploded. Taeyang watched his friends die in bursts of fire and metal. His own ship, the Soul's Pride, took a direct hit. The bridge exploded around him. Taeyang was thrown against the wall. Everything went dark. When he woke up hours later, he was floating in an escape pod watching his colony burn below. The Council fleet had moved to orbital bombardment. Chief Engineer Sun Yi Huang tried desperately to evacuate civilians. She coordinated the transport ships, loading thousands of people every minute. Women, children, elderly people, anyone who could fit. She worked without sleep, knowing that every second mattered. But the Council targeted the evacuation ships. Medical Officer Daeun Yoon was loading injured children onto a transport when a plasma beam struck it. The ship exploded in a ball of fire. Daeun fell to her knees screaming. 300 children had been on that ship. The Council was deliberately killing evacuees. The hospitals were hit next. Daeun watched her medical center collapse under bombardment. Thousands of patients died instantly. She ran through the streets trying to help survivors, but there were too many. The wounded lay everywhere, crying for help that would never come. Governor Sung Ho Nam broadcast from the colony's command center. He pleaded with the Council fleet to stop. He said they would evacuate peacefully. He begged them to spare the civilians. Velcrix responded by destroying the command center. The governor died with his family and his entire staff. Science Officer Yoon Ji-shin watched everything from a research station on the edge of the system. She was supposed to be studying star formation. Instead, she recorded the massacre. Her cameras captured Council ships deliberately targeting schools, hospitals, and residential areas. They fired on escape pods. They hunted down evacuation transports. This was not war. This was extermination. The bombardment lasted 6 hours. When it finally stopped, New Seoul was gone. The beautiful cities were craters. The farms were burning wastelands. The spaceports were twisted metal. 11,700,000 people were dead. Only 300,000 survived, rescued by a few transport ships that escaped. Velcrix broadcast a message to the entire galaxy. He said this was a lesson. Any species that defied the Council would suffer the same fate. Humanity had been warned. Now they had been punished. He expected Earth to surrender immediately. The news reached Earth 18 hours later. The planet went silent. 12 million people had woken up that morning in their homes. Now they were dust. Admiral Choi watched Yoonji's footage with tears running down her face. She had never seen anything so cruel in her life. President Lee addressed his planet. His voice shook with rage and grief. He declared that humanity would never surrender. The Council had made a terrible mistake. They thought humans were weak because they were young. They thought humans would be frightened. They were wrong. General Young Ho Han received emergency authorization. He unlocked the files marked Project Ragnarok. For 20 years, humanity had been preparing for the possibility of galactic war. They had built weapons in secret. Weapons that broke every treaty. Weapons that the Council had never imagined. Dr. Bo-Ra Jong received the activation codes for her research facility hidden beneath the Himalayas. She had spent decades developing these systems. She hoped they would never be used. But New Sol changed everything. The galaxy needed to learn what happened when you murdered human children. Taeyang floated in his escape pod, watching the dead planet below. He thought about his crew. He thought about the millions who died. He thought about the children who would never grow up. And he felt something cold settle into his heart. Not just anger. Not just grief. Something darker and more focused. Revenge. A rescue ship found him 3 days later. Commander Sujin Bei's fast response fleet had come from Earth. They pulled survivors from the wreckage. 300,000 traumatized souls who had watched their world die. Bei told them that Earth was preparing a response. Taeyang asked what kind of response. Bei smiled grimly. The kind that makes sure this never happens again. The Council thought they had won. Velcrick celebrated his victory, believing humanity would now accept their place as subjects. The other Council members congratulated him on teaching the humans a lesson. They went back to their normal lives, confident that the problem was solved. They did not understand what they had done. They had not defeated humanity. They had awakened something that had been sleeping since humans climbed down from the trees. Something violent and primal. Something that remembered every predator that ever hunted their ancestors. Something that knew how to survive by making the predators extinct. Deep beneath the Himalayas, Dr. Zhang activated her systems.
In orbit around Earth, Admiral Choi gave the order to mobilize the hidden fleet.
Across every human colony, soldiers prepared for war. And in his hospital bed on the rescue ship, Captain Taeyang Kim made a promise. The Council would pay for every life, every child, every dream burned to ash. Humanity would show the galaxy what happened when you pushed a young species too far. They would show them what happened when you killed their families. They would show them human fury unleashed. The mountain had always been there, ancient and massive, rising above the clouds in the Himalayas. People climbed it. Monks built temples on it. Nobody knew what was inside. Dr. Bo-Ra Jong had been working inside that mountain for 20 years. She rarely saw the sun. Her laboratory was buried 3 kilometers below solid rock, hidden from every sensor in the galaxy. She built weapons there. Terrible weapons. Weapons that would make the Council regret starting this war. When the activation order came, Bo-Ra was ready. She walked through her facility, past rows of fusion torpedoes that could crack planets, past the kinetic kill vehicles designed to travel at nearly the speed of light, past the quantum disruptors that could tear apart atoms themselves. She had created nightmares. Now she would unleash them. Admiral Heejin Choi arrived by helicopter. She landed on a secret platform and descended into the mountain. Bo-Ra met her in the main control room. The walls were covered with screens showing ships, weapons, and targets. Everything was ready. Bo-Ra explained Project Ragnarok. For 2 decades, humanity had been building a secret fleet. 200 stealth carriers invisible to Council sensors. Each carrier held weapons that violated every galactic treaty. Humanity had signed those treaties knowing they might need to break them someday. The Council fought with honor. They had rules about warfare. They used plasma weapons and energy shields. They engaged in ship-to-ship combat like knights dueling. It was all very civilized and traditional. Humanity was not civilized anymore. The Council had killed that when they burned New Sol. Commander Donghyun Park commanded the Ragnarok fleet. He was a quiet man who rarely smiled. His sister had lived on New Sol with her 3 children. They were ash now. Dong Hyun did not talk about them. He did not need to. Everyone in the fleet had lost someone. The survivors arrived at Earth. 300,000 people who had witnessed the massacre. They were put in hospitals, given food and medicine, but their eyes remained hollow. Captain Tae-Yang Kim could walk now. His burns were healing. His body would recover. His soul was another matter. The United Defense Council called him to testify. Tae-Yang stood before the assembly and told them what happened. He described watching his ships burn. He described the evacuation transports being hunted. He described floating in space while his colony died below. His voice never shook. He had no tears left. Medical Officer Dayun-Yoon testified next. She told them about the hospitals, about the children, about the council deliberately targeting the wounded and helpless. The assembly sat in stunned silence. Some of them had not believed the reports. Now they knew the truth. Engineer Sun Yi-Huang described coordinating the evacuation. She told them how she loaded transport after transport, watching families say goodbye, knowing most would die. She told them how the council fired on civilian ships marked with rescue symbols. She told them that the council wanted them all dead. Then Science Officer Yoon Ji-shin played her footage. The assembly watched in horror as New Seoul burned. They saw plasma beams striking hospitals. They saw evacuation ships exploding. They saw children running through streets as buildings collapsed around them. They saw Velcrix's flagship firing on a clearly marked refugee center. But the moment that changed everything came from a child. Ji-ho Nam was 8 years old. His father had been the colony governor. His mother and 2 sisters died in the first hour of the bombardment. Ji-ho survived because a stranger pushed him into an escape pod. The small boy stood at the podium, barely tall enough to see over it. Someone brought him a step stool. Ji-ho looked at the assembly with eyes too old for his face. He spoke in a small, clear voice that somehow filled the entire hall. My family wanted to live among the stars. They killed us for that. Please make them pay. The vote was unanimous. Humanity would respond with total war. No rules, no mercy, no surrender accepted. Every council world was now a legitimate target. Every council ship would be destroyed. Every council leader would face justice. President Jae-hyun Lee broadcast his message directly to the council chambers. He spoke simply and clearly. Humanity declared total war. The council had murdered millions of civilians. Now humanity would show them what happened when you made humans choose between civilization and survival. Survival always won. Fleet Admiral Young Sik-an took command of all military forces. He was 60 years old and had fought in border skirmishes against pirates. He understood war. But this was different. This was not about territory or resources. This was about making sure the galaxy never dared to attack humanity again. General Young Ho-han coordinated ground operations. Intelligence Director Min Seo-kang began psychological warfare operations. Her team would broadcast footage of New Seoul to every council world. She would make their civilians understand what their government had done. She would make them afraid. The council's response came quickly. Velcrix broadcast from his flagship. He laughed at humanity's threats. He said humans were children playing with toys. The council had 3,000 warships. Humanity had maybe 200. The council had been fighting wars for 6,000 years. Humanity barely knew how to leave their planet. The council was about to learn that experience meant nothing when facing an enemy with nothing left to lose. Operation Hammer launched 3 days after the declaration. Commander Dong Hyun Park led 50 Ragnarok carriers to Threxus Prime. The Threxians had the biggest shipyards in council space. They were building 300 new warships. Dong Hyun would make sure those ships never launched. The carriers dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. The Threxian sensors saw nothing. Human stealth technology was decades ahead of anything the council had. The carriers moved into position silently. Dong Hyun gave the order. Fire kinetic kill vehicles launched. They were simple weapons. Just tungsten rods accelerated to 90% of light speed. No explosives needed. At that velocity, the kinetic energy alone was devastating. Einstein's equation worked perfectly. Mass times velocity squared equals obliteration. The rods hit the shipyards 90 seconds later. 300 warships under construction simply ceased to exist. The impact energy was greater than fusion bombs. Metal vaporized. Stone melted. 2 centuries of work disappeared in flashes of light brighter than suns. Captain Mi Young Lee's fighter wing swept through the debris field. Their job was simple. No survivors. No witnesses. No one to warn the council about what had just happened. It was cold-blooded murder. It was also necessary. The Ragnarok carriers jumped back to hyperspace before the Threxians even knew they were there. Donghyun watched the sensors showing the destroyed shipyards growing distant. He thought about his sister, about his nieces and nephew, about the millions who died at New Seoul. This was just the beginning. News of Threxus Prime reached the council 6 hours later. The chambers erupted in chaos. The Threxian High Counselor demanded immediate retaliation. The Velkari wanted to mobilize the entire fleet. The other council members argued about what to do. They had thought humans were primitives. They had thought humanity's threats were empty posturing. They had thought wrong. The greatest shipyard in council space was gone. 300 warships destroyed before they ever launched. And the council had not even seen the attackers. Fear began to spread. If humanity could strike Threxus Prime, they could strike anywhere. Council worlds started demanding protection. Council leaders started questioning whether attacking New Seoul had been wise. Admiral Choi watched the council's panicked transmissions from Earth. She smiled grimly. Good. Let them be afraid. Let them understand what New Seoul felt like when 300 warships appeared in orbit. Let them know the terror of helplessness. Dr. Zhang prepared the next weapons: fusion torpedoes, quantum disruptors, nano-swarm packages, each one more terrible than the last. She had been a scientist once. She had dreamed of using her knowledge to help people. Now she used it to destroy civilizations. She did not sleep well anymore. But every time she felt doubt, she watched the footage from New Seoul. She saw the children. She saw the hospitals. She saw the evacuation ships burning. Then she went back to work. The message went out to every human colony. The message was clear. We are coming. We will not stop. We will not negotiate. The council wanted war. Now they would learn what human war meant. Total. Absolute. Merciless. The council chambers on Velkara had stood for 6,000 years. Built from crystal and metal, they housed the 7 species that ruled the galaxy. No one had ever attacked this place. No one had ever dared. Until now. High Counselor Thexril slammed his clawed hand on the table. The Threxian leader was furious. His shipyards were destroyed. 300 warships were gone. Centuries of work reduced to vapor. He demanded immediate retaliation. He wanted Earth burned to ash like New Seoul. But the other council members were afraid. They had watched the sensor data from Threxus Prime. They saw how the humans attacked. No warnings, no honor. Just sudden, overwhelming destruction. The enemy appeared from nowhere, destroyed everything, and vanished before anyone could respond. Velkrik stood before the council. The Velkari warlord had started this war by massacring New Seoul. Now he tried to convince the others that humanity was not a real threat. He said the Threxus attack was lucky. He said humans were primitives who got one good strike. He said the council just needed to mobilize their fleet and crush Earth. Council Chief Scientist Zarmoth disagreed. He showed them the weapons analysis. The kinetic kill vehicles traveled at 90% of light speed. That required technology the council did not have. Worse, the human ships were completely invisible to council sensors. They could strike anywhere, anytime, and no one would see them coming. The Neptari representative, council member Wex Allah, suggested negotiation. Her species lived in water and preferred peace. She said the council made a mistake attacking New Seoul. She said they should apologize and make peace before more people died. Velkrix roared at her. Apologize to humans? Never. The council did not apologize. The council ruled. If the humans did not understand that, they would learn through pain. He demanded the council assemble every ship and attack Earth directly. High Counselor Murex of the Quarians supported Velkrix. His crystalline people valued strength. He said showing weakness now would encourage other young species to rebel. The council had to demonstrate their power. They had to crush humanity completely. The vote passed. The council would mobilize their entire fleet and attack Earth. They would end this war quickly and decisively. They had no idea what was coming. Intelligence. Director Min Seo Kang worked from a secure facility on Earth. Her job was information warfare. She had identified a target that would cripple the council's ability to coordinate their fleet. The communication nexus on Drelkor mining colony. Destroy that, and the council would be blind and deaf. Lieutenant Commander Jae-Sung-Oh led a special operations team, 50 soldiers trained for this exact mission. They approached Drelkor in a stolen council transport. The guards waved them through. The council never imagined humans could infiltrate their systems. The team landed at the communication nexus, posing as maintenance workers. Captain Won-shik Ryu led the hacker unit. They plugged into the main computer and downloaded everything. Complete fleet positions, supply depot locations, command codes, defense grids, everything the council thought was secret. Then Won-shik uploaded a virus. A beautiful, terrible piece of code that would do two things. First, it would broadcast the footage from New Seoul to every council world simultaneously. Every civilian would see what their government did. Every parent would watch human children die. Second, the virus would corrupt all navigation data in the council fleet database. Thousands of warships would suddenly not know where their bases were. They would not know where their supply depots were. They would not know how to find each other. The mighty council fleet would be lost in space. The virus activated across the entire council network. On Velkara, citizens watched their screens in horror as New Seoul burned. They saw the plasma beams striking hospitals. They saw the evacuation ships exploding. They saw children running through flames. Many Velkari had never known what Velkrix did. Now they knew. On Quaria, millions of crystalline beings watched the massacre. They had been told that humans were dangerous aggressors who needed to be stopped. The footage showed the truth. Humans were victims. The council were murderers. Protests erupted across the planet. On the Neptari homeworld, the entire population demanded their leaders withdraw from the council. They would not support genocide. They would not be part of this crime. Jae-Sung-Oh's team planted fusion charges throughout the communication nexus. They set the timers for 10 minutes and ran. The extraction was clean. They were back in space when the charges detonated. The nexus became a ball of superheated plasma. The council's central communication hub was gone. Admiral Hyejin Choi watched the reports from Earth. The operation was a complete success. The council fleet was in chaos. Ships could not find their bases. Commanders could not coordinate with each other. The navigation corruption would take weeks to fix. But the real victory was political. The council was fracturing from within. The Neptari ambassador Lexandi publicly broke with the council. She called the New Seoul massacre a war crime. She demanded Velkrix face justice. She said her people would no longer follow orders from murderers. On Quaria, the protest grew into revolution. Millions marched through the crystalline cities demanding peace. They wanted council member Mirex to resign. They wanted negotiations with humanity. They wanted no part of this war. Even on Velkara, whispers spread that Velkrix had gone too far. Many Velkari were warriors, but they were not monsters. Killing civilians was dishonorable. Targeting children was unforgivable. Some military officers quietly began questioning their orders, but the hardliners remained in control. Thexrel convinced the council that showing weakness would destroy them. If they negotiated now, every species in the galaxy would see them as beaten. They had to win this war, whatever the cost. The council called up their reserve fleets, 5,000 warships from across their territory. They would gather, fix their navigation systems, and then crush humanity once and for all. Dr. Bora Jong prepared the next weapon, nanoswarms, trillions of microscopic machines designed to dismantle matter at the molecular level. Self-replicating. Unstoppable. She had hesitated to use them. They were too terrible, too final. Then she watched the New Seoul footage again. She saw the hospitals. She saw the children. She authorized deployment. Fleet Admiral Young Sik An selected 3 council agricultural worlds, not home worlds, not major colonies, just farming planets that fed billions of council citizens. Captain Hyunwoo Bak's stealth ship delivered the packages, small containers barely a meter across. Inside each one were 10 trillion nanomachines. The containers opened in the atmosphere. The nanomachines spread like invisible clouds. They landed on forests. They landed on farms. They landed on livestock. And they began to consume. Within 3 days, all organic matter on those 3 worlds was gone. The forests were dust. The crops were powder. The livestock were piles of carbon. The planets were intact but lifeless. Gray balls of rock where green worlds once thrived. The psychological impact was devastating. The Council realized humanity could end ecosystems without firing a shot. Food shortages began immediately. Panic buying stripped stores bare. Some Council worlds started hoarding supplies, refusing to share with others. President Jae-hyun Lee broadcast another message. For every human life taken at New Seoul, we will exact a price measured in worlds. Surrender now or watch your civilization starve. The Council did not surrender. Velcrix proposed a desperate plan. Strike directly at Earth. Kill the human homeworld and the rest of humanity would collapse. It was risky. Earth was heavily defended, but the Council was running out of options. The Council assembled 8,000 warships. Every available vessel. The largest battle fleet ever created. Fleet Commander Dexral, a veteran Velkari officer, took command. They would jump directly into the solar system and overwhelm Earth's defenses through sheer numbers. Intelligence Director Minseo Kang intercepted the battle plans. She brought them to Admiral Choi with a smile. The Council was gathering their entire fleet in one location. They were walking into the perfect trap. Earth had been preparing for this moment for 20 years. The Sol defense grid was ready. The orbital weapons were charged. The hidden fleets were positioned. And most importantly, the fusion minefields were armed and waiting. Admiral Choi gave the order. Let them come. We will show them what happens when you attack humanity's homeworld. The Council fleet jumped to hyperspace, confident in their numerical superiority. 8,000 ships against Earth's defenses. They expected an easy victory. They expected wrong. 8,000 warships emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the solar system. They appeared in perfect formation, a wall of metal and weapons that stretched across space. It was the largest military force ever assembled. Fleet Commander Dexral looked at his sensors and smiled. Earth was doomed. He opened a channel to Earth. His message was simple. Surrender within 1 hour or your planet burns. To prove he was serious, Dexral ordered his forward ships to destroy Mars colony's orbital stations. Plasma beams cut through the defenseless structures. 50,000 humans died in seconds. On Earth, Admiral Hye-jin Choi watched the display calmly. She sat in the command center deep beneath Geneva, surrounded by screens showing every ship, every weapon, every piece of the defense grid. She had waited 20 years for this moment. The Council fleet was exactly where she wanted them. General Young Ho Han commanded the ground defenses. Millions of soldiers waited in bunkers and shelters, but everyone knew the real battle would be fought in space. If the fleet broke through, there would be no ground defense. There would be no Earth. President Jae-hyun Lee addressed the planet one last time. His message was broadcast to every human colony across the galaxy. Today we show them what happens when you threaten our home. Today they learn that humanity does not surrender. Dexral's hour passed. Earth did not surrender. He gave the order to advance. 8,000 ships began moving toward the inner system. They traveled in standard Council formation, ships arranged in neat rows and columns. It was traditional. It was proper. It was also a mistake. The Council fleet crossed the orbital plane of Jupiter. They detected nothing unusual. Their sensors showed empty space ahead. No ships, no weapons, no defenses. Just the inner planets waiting to be conquered. Then the mines activated. Jupiter's orbit contained 3 million fusion mines. Each one was small, cold, and completely invisible to Council sensors. They had been floating there for 10 years, waiting patiently. Now they woke up. 2,000 Council warships vanished in the first 30 seconds. The mines did not just explode. They created cascading fusion reactions that tore through entire formations. Ships that were not destroyed directly were caught in the blast waves. Their shields collapsed. Their hulls melted. Their crews died without understanding what killed them. Dexral shouted orders. Scatter formation. Evasive maneuvers. Full speed ahead. But the mines were AI-controlled. They tracked every ship. They predicted every course correction. They learned from every tactic. For every mine destroyed, 10 more moved into position. Admiral Choi watched the carnage with cold satisfaction. The Council was learning why humanity spent 20 years preparing. They were learning why Earth was called the Fortress World. They were learning that attacking someone's homeworld was not a matter of numbers. It was a matter of will. Colonel Subin Kang activated the Sol defense grid. 10,000 orbital weapons platforms came online simultaneously. They had been hidden among the asteroids, disguised as rocks and ice. Now they revealed themselves. The platforms opened fire. Kinetic cannons, missile batteries, laser arrays. all directed by quantum computers that could predict enemy movements before they happened. The Council fleet found itself in a crossfire from every direction. Their shields, designed to stop plasma weapons, were useless against solid projectiles traveling at relativistic speeds. The lunar surface split open. Engineer Juan Jaiseo had spent a decade hollowing out sections of the moon. Inside were massive railguns, each one capable of accelerating projectiles to incredible velocities. The railguns fired continuously, each shot carrying the kinetic energy of a tactical nuclear weapon. Council ships tried to return fire, but they could not target the railguns. The projectiles moved too fast. By the time sensors detected the launch, the shot had already hit. Dreadnoughts were cracked open like eggs. Carriers were punched through from nose to stern. Capital ships became floating wreckage. Captain Su Min Hong launched her fighter wing from hidden bases on Europa. 3,000 human pilots, each one linked directly to their craft through neural interfaces. They were not flying the fighters. They were the fighters. Every thought became action. Every instinct became maneuver. The fighters swarmed through the Council formation like angry wasps. They were too small and too fast for capital ship weapons to track. They carried quantum torpedoes that phased through shields. They targeted command ships specifically, killing the officers trying to coordinate the defense. Within 1 hour, the Council fleet was down to 5,000 ships. Dexrel tried to withdraw. He ordered a retreat back to the jump point, but Lieutenant Haywan Park's task force had positioned behind them during the confusion. The Council was surrounded. Then the Ragnarok fleet arrived. Commander Dong-Hyun Park's 200 stealth carriers dropped out of hyperspace directly in the center of the Council formation. They appeared from nowhere, materializing like ghosts. The Council sensors screamed warnings, but it was too late. The carriers unleashed everything: fusion torpedoes, kinetic kill vehicles, quantum disruptors, drone swarms. Millions of autonomous drones poured from the carriers like a metal flood. Each drone was fast, smart, and carried enough explosives to crack a warship's hull. The drones tore through Council ships like piranhas attacking prey. They found every weak point, every gap in the armor, every vulnerable system. They coordinated perfectly, swarming damaged ships until they broke apart. Dr. Bora Zhang's most terrible weapon appeared: zero-point energy disruptors. These weapons did not destroy ships. They erased them. They collapsed the zero-point energy fields that held matter together. The Council watched in horror as their most powerful dreadnoughts simply ceased to exist. No explosion, no debris, just empty space where a ship used to be. Fleet Admiral Young Sik An coordinated the final assault from Earth. The lunar railguns fired continuously. The orbital platforms executed automated attack patterns. The fighters exploited every opening. The Ragnarok carriers poured out death, and the Council fleet died. Dexrel broadcast a desperate call for reinforcements. His fleet was being slaughtered. He needed help. He needed ships. He needed anything. Admiral Choi personally responded, "There are no reinforcements coming. While you attacked Earth, our fleets destroyed your shipyards, your supply depots, and your military bases. You are alone. You are beaten. Surrender now." The Council fleet shattered. Ships fled in every direction, abandoning formation and discipline. Officers stopped following orders. Crews mutinied. Everyone just wanted to survive. The mighty Council armada became a mob of terrified survivors running for their lives. A kinetic round from the lunar batteries struck Dexrel's flagship. The massive ship broke in half. Emergency systems kept the command section alive, but the flagship was crippled, drifting helplessly. Dexrel looked at his screen showing the destroyed fleet and knew the war was over. He opened a channel to Earth. "I surrender. Unconditional surrender. Please stop firing." The weapons fell silent. The battlefield was filled with wreckage and bodies. 8,000 ships had attacked Earth. Only 300 survived. 700,000 Council personnel were dead or captured. The greatest fleet ever assembled was destroyed in 6 hours. President Jae-hyun Lee addressed the surrendering fleet. "Your surrender is noted. However, there will be a reckoning for New Seoul. You will all stand trial for war crimes. Any ship that attempts to flee will be destroyed. Comply with all instructions." Captain Tae-Yang Kim, now promoted to admiral, was given the honor of accepting Dexrel's formal surrender. He boarded the crippled flagship with a security team. Dexrel knelt before him as Council tradition required. Taeyang looked at the defeated commander. He thought about his crew who died at New Seoul. He thought about the millions of civilians the council murdered. He thought about young Jiho Nam asking them to make the council pay. Your surrender is accepted. You are now prisoners of war. You will be transported to Earth to face justice. The battle for Earth was over. Humanity had won, but the war was not finished. The council's homeworld still stood. Their leaders still lived, and humanity wanted justice. Admiral Choi watched the captured ships being escorted to holding orbits. She allowed herself a small smile. Earth was safe. The council fleet was destroyed. Now came the next phase. Occupation, trials, and the building of a new galactic order where no species would ever again dare to attack human civilians. The galaxy was about to learn a new rule. Do not threaten humanity's home. Do not kill human children, because humanity never forgets, and humanity never forgives. The council fleet was destroyed. Earth was safe. Now came the reckoning. Fleet Admiral Young-Sik An divided the Ragnarok fleet into 20 hunter-killer groups. Each group had one mission: find and eliminate remaining council military forces, occupy strategic worlds, bring council leaders to justice. The hunt began immediately. Commander Sang-Min Kim led his group to Velkara, the council's seat of power, the planet where Velcrix ruled and where the order to massacre New Seoul was given. Velkara had strong defenses once. Before the Battle of Earth, they had thousands of ships guarding their homeworld. Now they had nothing. The Home Guard fleet had been sent to attack Earth. None of those ships returned. Velkara was defenseless. Sang-Min's carriers appeared in orbit and broadcast a simple message: surrender or be destroyed. You have 1 hour. The Velkari government surrendered in 20 minutes. They had seen what happened to their fleet at Earth. They had no desire to fight. Ground forces landed without resistance. Captain Kyungmi Ro led her Marines through the capital city, searching for Velcrix. The warlord tried to flee. He boarded a private shuttle and attempted to escape the planet. But human fighters intercepted him. They disabled his ship and forced it back to the spaceport. Kyungmi arrested him personally. She looked at the creature who ordered the death of millions and felt nothing but contempt. You are under arrest for genocide, crimes against humanity, and violations of the laws of war. You will be transported to Earth for trial. Velcrix snarled at her. He threatened her with council law. He demanded diplomatic immunity. He said humanity would pay for this insult. Kyungmi smiled coldly. The council no longer exists. You have no immunity, and humanity already paid. We paid with New Seoul on Threx's Prime. General Young Ho Han led a ground invasion. The planet was already damaged from the kinetic strike that destroyed their shipyards. The Threxian military was demoralized and leaderless. They surrendered without fighting. High Counselor Thexeral was found hiding in a bunker complex beneath the capital. He had been broadcasting defiant messages just days earlier. Now he cowered underground, surrounded by guards who no longer believed in the cause. The guards opened the bunker doors and handed him over. One by one, the council homeworlds fell. The Quarians surrendered peacefully, their government already toppled by internal protests. The Neptari welcomed human forces as liberators, having opposed the war from the beginning. The other species simply collapsed, their military destroyed and their populations exhausted. Within 3 weeks, all 7 council homeworlds were under human occupation. Admiral Hyejin Choi established military governorships on each planet. She was fair but firm. Civilians were not harmed. Infrastructure was protected. But any resistance was crushed immediately. The speed of the conquest shocked the entire galaxy. Humanity had achieved in weeks what would have taken the old council centuries. The message was clear. Humanity was now the dominant military power in known space. President Jae-hyun Lee announced the formation of the Galactic Justice Tribunal. It would be held on Earth. Every species in the galaxy was invited to send observers. The trials would be broadcast to every world. Justice would be seen by all. Chief Justice Yeon Hee-son was appointed to oversee the proceedings. She was a respected international law expert who had spent decades studying justice systems across human and alien cultures. She would be fair. She would follow the law. But she would not show mercy to those who showed none at New Seoul. Velcrix stood trial first. He was brought into the courtroom in chains. The gallery was filled with survivors from New Seoul, with families who lost loved ones, with people who wanted to see justice done. Science officer Yoon Ji-shin presented her footage. The court watched in silence as New Seoul burned. They saw hospitals destroyed. They saw evacuation ships hunted. They saw children dying in the streets. Several observers had to leave the courtroom. The footage was too terrible to watch. Medical Officer Da Eun-yoon testified about the deliberate targeting of medical facilities. Engineer Sun-yi Hwang described the attacks on evacuation transports. Captain Tae-young Kim detailed how his defense fleet was destroyed before they could even fight back. Then young Ji-ho Nam took the stand. He was 9 years old now. He looked directly at Velkrix and identified him as the commander, who personally ordered the destruction of his family's evacuation ship. His voice was steady. His eyes were hard. He did not cry. The evidence was overwhelming. Velkrix was convicted of genocide, crimes against humanity, and violations of the laws of war. The penalty was death. Captain Tae-young Kim, as ranking survivor of New Seoul's defense forces, read the sentence. You are sentenced to death by spacing. This is the traditional penalty for piracy and war crimes. Your body will be ejected into the void as you ejected millions of innocent souls. Velkrix was executed 3 days later. No ceremony. No speeches. He was simply put in an airlock and released into space. His body would drift in the void forever, a warning to anyone who might follow his path. High Counselor Thexerol received life imprisonment. He had supported the massacre but had not ordered it. Fleet Commander Dexerol cooperated fully with investigators. He provided intelligence on Council military operations. He testified against other leaders. He received a reduced sentence of 20 years. Lower-ranking Council officials who could prove they opposed the massacre were offered amnesty. Many Neptari and Quarian leaders accepted. They helped humanity understand Council systems and assisted with reconstruction. With the Council dismantled, humanity faced a critical decision. What came next? Ambassador Ji-woo Park had spent years attempting failed diplomacy with the Council. Now she led negotiations for a new galactic government. Dr. Bora Jong proposed the Federation of Free Worlds, a democratic alliance where every species had equal representation. No single species could veto decisions. No species was superior to others. All members would have the same rights and responsibilities. Intelligence Director Min Seo Kang designed safeguards against future aggression. Any species joining the Federation agreed to limits on military buildup, agreed to inspections, agreed to peaceful dispute resolution, but most importantly agreed to a collective defense clause. An attack on one member was an attack on all. Admiral Haijin Choi insisted the Federation maintain a strong military. The Sentinel fleet would be a permanent force tasked with defending all member worlds. It would be composed of ships from every species, but its core would be the Ragnarok carriers, a reminder of what happened when someone broke the peace. Many former Council species embraced the new system. The Neptari became humanity's strongest allies. They had opposed the war and paid the price with internal strife. Now they found partners who valued their principles. The Quarians joined enthusiastically. Their revolution had overthrown the old government. Now they had a chance to build something better. Even some Velkarian Threxians sought membership. They were disgusted by what their former leaders had done. They wanted redemption. The Federation's founding charter was signed on New Seoul's ruins. The site of humanity's greatest tragedy became the birthplace of a new galactic order. A memorial was constructed honoring the 11,700,000 victims. Young Ji-ho Nam, representing all the children orphaned by the massacre, lit the eternal flame. It would burn forever, a reminder of the cost of tyranny and the price of freedom. President Lee addressed the First Federation Assembly. He spoke about the war's cost. 200,000 human military personnel died. 30 million Council citizens perished in the counterstrikes. The economic damage ran into the trillions. But the greatest cost was innocence lost. Humanity had entered the galaxy with hope and optimism. The Council transformed them into warriors. Dr. Jong's weapons remained stockpiled, a reminder that humanity could exterminate any species that threatened them. Captain Tae-young Kim, now Admiral Kim, reflected on the transformation. We wanted to be explorers and dreamers. They made us warriors. We can never go back, but perhaps we can build something better than what the Council represented. Fleet Admiral Young-sik An established the Sentinel fleet as a permanent force. Commander Dong-hyun Park's Ragnarok carriers became its core. Every species in the galaxy received the same message. We sought peace. We were given war. We will never be victimized again. The message was clear. The Federation would defend its members with overwhelming force, attack any Federation world, and face the same fury that destroyed the Council fleet at Earth. Humanity was ascendant. They had gone from victims to victors in just months. They had built a new galactic order from the ashes of the old, and they made sure that no species would ever again dare to massacre civilians. The galaxy would remember New Sol. They would remember the Council's cruelty, and they would remember humanity's response. Total. Absolute. Overwhelming. They would remember that humanity, when pushed too far, became the most dangerous predator in the galaxy.